Good morning, everyone. I declare this meeting open, the Community Committee, and we're live streamed. Are we live streamed? Yes, we are. And so it's settle the spirit, clear the mind, prepare the body to achieve what needs to be achieved. Yes, we've got apologies. We have apologies from Councillor Thwaites. We've got apologies from Councillor Henry, who's sick. Danny Simpson, his daughter has a medical appointment, and John Clements has apologised, and he has sent Norm Mayo in his place. Now, for all of you, you should know that Norm is, we'll clear the, I'll move that the apologies be accepted. Is there a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Ray. Those in favour will say aye. Against, carried. Just as an aside, Councillor Norm Mayo has represented this community for a very, very long time. And it's wonderful to have you here today, Norm. And I gather you're not standing again, but we're delighted to have you here. Thank you. So, apologies for lateness. Any consideration of late items? We haven't got any, have we? Declarations of interest. We're all interested, so that's good. And public excluded, we haven't got any of those. And so we move to the presentations. The first one being delegation of decision-making for community. Now that's on page 7. Who's introducing this?
I am.
Thank you.
Morning, everybody. So for those who don't know me already, my name is Christine Sadlier and I look after the Community Matching Fund. I'm part of the Community and Strategic Relationships team with Jodie Brickett. So Council runs this annual fund, contestable fund, Community Matching Fund, and it's due to open on the 1st of July and closes on the 31st of July. So this report, the purpose of the report is to decide on who the working party will be for this year's fund, please.
Right. Normally, Councillor Granger is there, but he's going to be away. And I see the recommendation is for Councillor Coxhead, who's not objecting, to actually be on that committee. So is any questions? No questions? Murray, you're prepared to move? Who's seconding? Thank you, Member Diva. Any discussion? Those in favour will say aye. Against, carried. That was easy. Thank you.
Thank you.
The school sustainability, that's on page 10. And resilience. I don't know about other councillors, but I appreciated this report and one wondered why we got into it in the first place. I think it appeared to be a good idea at the time, but would you like to report to us?
Yeah, kia ora. I'm Lisa from the Community and Strategic Relationship team. So yeah, the purpose of the report is to seek guidance on continuing or discontinuing with the school sustainability fund. So our recommendation is to discontinue and redirect that $20,000 back into the community match fund. Alternatively, or to continue and contribute 20,000 again next year for the school sustainability fund.
Councillor Granger.
I'd just like to thank the staff for such an excellent report on a very, I think, difficult topic in a sense, to bring all that information back to us and tell us how it went so well. Tell us so well how it went so badly.
That's
it's
true.
Very, very good.
Any questions? No other questions. Are you moving that the report be received? The recommendations there, Councillor Granger?
Yeah, for number 3.
Yes.
Number
Is there a
3.
seconder?
Yeah.
Councillor Sol. Any debate? Councillor, yes.
I'd just like to we try innovation, and this was something that we tried. And another thing that we like to do is leverage, and that was certainly an intention in that. And so even though it wasn't that great, it was worth a crack. So thank you.
We do have people who volunteer at our schools to encourage children to grow vegetables. And Pies Par School is a good example of that, and so is Kaimai with Mr. Caddy. But do we have any other networks in that regard?
For food resilience and sustainability, yes. So we work with a Kai Resilience Network across the whole district, and there's little groups all across the district. It's actually a really flourishing kind of area in our district.
Good, thank you. So, any further discussion? Councillor?
Yeah, obviously supportive of this initiative, but just visiting one of our reserves in Te Puke last night, and that's Lawrence Oliver Park in Te Puke, where we've just created a new wetland, and I noticed that there was a wattle tree had fallen over across the drain.
Well, I think we're on the wrong topic. One's sustainability.
Oh,
You're speaking to the sustainability in schools.
okay, sorry, it sounded like.
So I think you're in agreement.
Yes.
I'll put the motion. Those in favour will say aye. Against, carried. And you'll put in a service request about that, obviously, Grant?
Might talk about it next.
Right. The next item is, what page are we on? Liesl, is this yours? Community outcome?
The sea cleaners application. So, yeah. Yes, so the purpose of this report is to recommend that council contributes 25,000 to sea cleaners for 1 year of operations in our district to pick up litter along the coast and the waterways, estuaries and harbours. As outlined in the report, we declined an application from them in the LTP for 75,000 over 3 years for additional budget. We're recommending that we'll fund 25,000 for 1 year from current, within current operational budgets.
Thank you. Mayor Denyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Great initiative. I'd like to support, but I would like to understand what it looks like in terms of long-term funding for this, because I'm conscious, if we fund it for 1 year and then what happens. And so perhaps you can talk about how that might look.
So sea cleaners, we've been very clear with them that will be 1 year if we do fund, and they're working very hard to find alternative funders. They have many on board, and including corporate sponsorship and philanthropic sponsorship. So they're aware of that, and they know that that they'll need to do that to continue after their 1 year.
So my point was really, are we going to be asked to put forward another 25,000 at the next annual plan and then long-term plan after that, or what's the thinking there?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. Obviously, that's an option for sea cleaners to come back to council at that point. I think the providing that funding for 1 year allows sea cleaners to create the relationships they need and the networks they need to work in the Western Bay District. And we've been really clear that from that point on, it's kind of up to them. So we've made no commitments beyond 1 year. I think it's a similar sort of situation where we want to see how it goes, see what value they're bringing, and then we can bring that back to elected members to say, this is something that you could look at funding on a longer term basis or not.
Yeah, thank you.
Member Denver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dever, D-E-V-E-R, it's like ever with a D in front. But I just wanted to speak. I think my question's actually been asked by Mayor Denyer, and I'm happy as long as they come back with a report saying this is what we did before they would expect any further funding would be my.
Good. Councillor Coxhead.
I'm just aware that this has always been an initiative by the local community, but I can only really speak about Waihi Beach. and it's the group that Pippa Coombs is involved in, and they've done an awful lot of, community work, and she's very involved in this, and the bits and pieces that still come up from the RENA as well, that's still happening obviously too. But would this still require community support in addition to what Sea Cleaners will be doing?
Yes, so unfortunately, one organisation alone or one program alone wouldn't be able to tackle the amount of waste, especially in areas like Waihi Beach that you've mentioned, and Makatu has a similar problem with just the currents. So as outlined in the deliverables that we would expect of Sea Cleaners, they must work with organisations, and that is their approach, that they want community engagement and participation in their program. So they're part of it is that they bring people on their boats as well. So it's very much a collaborative effort. They're already working a lot with the communities, including Pippa Coombs. And yeah, that's an expectation ongoing that would continue.
So how much time does $25,000 buy us?
Well, it's not kind of quite set out in that sense. So it's a contribution towards their full program. So they have quite a few FTE, I can't remember off the top of my head, but they full-time staff, I think about 3 staff that do the whole region, Bay of Plenty region, but they would be expected to use 30% of their time in our district because it is 30% of the region's coastline. So yeah, it's not set out specifically like that, but yeah, I guess roughly 30% of the full-time, 3 full-time FTEs. It's a contribution too, so there's obviously many other funders involved in the full operation.
If I may, Madam Chair, just to clarify, it's not just repeating the work of what Dot Watch and others do or the scheme in Waihi Beach. They have boats that pick up rubbish in the sea and the harbour and things. So it's a slightly more mechanised way of doing it. So it's not a question of $25,000 buys you, a quarter FTE who litter picks on the beach. That's not quite how it goes. It's a little bit more coordinated and automated than that.
Yeah, I'm still just interested in the time allocation, but
Thank you. I've got Councillor Ray.
I'll just be happy to move, Madam Chair, when you're ready.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Granger.
Thank you. The statistic that Lisa just gave of coastline, that sort of implies you're not talking about the inner harbour coastline. So is this not going to apply in the harbour?
Yes, it's harbours and waterways, so rivers, estuaries. Yeah.
So we must have more than 30% of the coastline when you take what?
For the whole Bay of Plenty region, including Rotorua Lakes as well. It's not an exact figure.
Yeah, right. But they are intending to work in the harbour as well.
Yeah.
Yes, along with other groups. Yeah.
Yes.
Councillor Sol.
Thank you, Madam. Basically, my questions have been asked by Councillor Coxhead and Councillor Granger. So,
Could I just ask, normally the regional council looks after the water on the harbour. And so tell me the relationship between having boats come in that will work in the water, but the regional council is obviously contributing to this significantly, because one of the things we often criticise our councils for is the double dipping, that we do stuff, they do stuff, and we're all doing the same thing. And so why should we be contributing to this when it's the regional council's responsibility?
So the regional council is responsible for below the high tide mark, and district or city councils are responsible for litter above the high tide mark. So Sea Cleaners will be cleaning on both of those areas. So that, and as you've mentioned, regional council are contributing significantly to this as well.
Right. So tell me the low tide mark, high tide mark and the low tide mark,
sorry.
that difference in between, can the boat get in there?
Sorry, I mean, regional council is responsible below the high tide mark and district council above the high tide mark, sorry. And they have boats so they can go everywhere, and including Matakana Island and the inner harbour islands as well.
Thank you. So it's been moved by Councillor Ray and seconded by Councillor Sol. Any discussion? Councillor Ray.
I'd just like to speak to this. I really love this. I was disappointed in the long-term plan when we weren't able to fund it. Obviously, that was a significant difference in money that they were asking for, but I absolutely know the condition of the environment out there, and I've said it multiple times on this table. And so I love the fact that we're now going to have some significant help in that area to clean it up, because it's really bad problem. So just absolutely endorse this, and thank you for the report.
Thank you. Councillor Sol.
Thank you, Madam. Yeah, I support this very strongly. I really am quite pleased to see us contributing to it. To try it, I guess, is still what it's about, and to see what the results are. But to be honest, our coastline, and in particular the inner harbour, is of great concern, I think, to a lot of us. And starting today isn't too soon. Let's put it that way. And being able to enable that is so important. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, well, I'll put the motion. Oh, sorry, Councillor Granger.
Yes, I also support this, and very keen to see cleaners leverage. As my colleague over there was saying, the other community groups, to have somebody coordinating all this. I mean, there are random little people who decide to do a cleanup here and there, but to get somebody who can sort of coordinate the various groups and mobilise the army of volunteers that are out there and that are concerned about our harbours is going to be great. I mean, and it's not hard to find the rubbish. I was down by our bird hide the other day and picked up 10 litres worth, 10 litre bucket full of rubbish just in that little environment. Didn't have to go very far. So that's something that needs to be done. So we're very happy to support it.
So the reporting back is going to be really important. So we look forward to it. I'll put the motion. It's been moved by Councillor Ray, second by Councillor Sol. Put the motion. In favour will say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Now the next one is on page 29, and this is a visit to the cruise ship that I was privileged to be on. And I've missed one. I'd love you to. All right. Page 25, everybody.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Ella has produced a lovely summary of the recent round of community forums that were held. This is a useful segue for our conveners to share their insights in relation to what happened on each of those nights. But before we go there, I wouldn't mind just reflecting on, starting with Katikati Waihi Beach, the key projects that were featured on that evening included the Athenry Jetty, here in Crescent Elder Housing, the Dave Hume Pool upgrade, the Katikati Wastewater Disposal Future Directions Project, Waihi Beach Stormwater Projects, and Te Ara Mā Tauranga Waihi Beach Library. There was in or around 40 attendees, a really busy and productive evening that night. We did receive also 6 service requests. The topics are included in there. The Kaimai Ward, which was held at the Tupuna School Hall, covered, from what I understand, roading was a hot topic that night as well, and Cullen was in hot demand, as he tends to be wherever he goes. So State Highway 2, Omokoroa Road intersection upgrade, the urbanisation projects in Omokoroa, the Waitui Reserve Timber Seawall Replacement Project, Minden Lookout, Tupuna Station Road, Clark Road intersection improvement and roading updates, as well as the Tupuna Lockheed Pitua and Tangitu Road roundabout. And there was a really good attendance at the Kaimai Forum as well. There were no service requests lodged that night, but we did, our comms and engagement team did run a little bit of a dot survey asking attendees to identify how they'd like to be communicated with by council, and those responses, and clearly the preference is via Facebook, certainly for Tupuna, or Kaimai, Facebook and Antino. and or council's e-newsletter. At the Makitu, for Makitu and Te Puke ward, our conveners took a slightly different approach where we had a series of really informative presentations from schools and other local community stakeholders first. And there was, so that was at the Paingaro Hall and covered a broad spectrum of projects as well. So that's, from a staff perspective, that's an update as to how the forums went. I wonder, Madam Chair, whether your conveners might like to add a little bit of flavour to that.
Councillor Wickes. Sure.
I came into the role as a convener after the passing of Richard, and they tended to be so negative, these forums, and just by talking with a number of staff in regard to how we might do it differently, it emerged as that sort of forum principle. And so I'm thankful for the staff for, it was a very collaborative effort for doing that, and it was totally changed the mood of those meetings from then on. You just note that the purpose of the forums was to fill a gap in representation review, and there's a question mark over what happens in the future. I would suggest that it's still a fantastic vehicle to engage with the community, and so would recommend to the incoming council to find a way, if possible, to continue that style of meeting. And special thanks to Ella for the first one. It was a long haul, but appreciated the staff's involvement in making it work. Thank you.
Councillor Coxhead.
I think the numbers at the Kaimai Expo speak for themselves. 70 people out in Te Puna. That was a really good effort. Unfortunately, I got a little bit locked in on communications and roading and never really got to see everything, which was a shame. But anyway, that is, I guess, the downside, though. You don't get to hear everything. But I have had some feedback, and this isn't in any way negative towards the expo. It's actually positive towards the forums as well. And people really enjoyed, particularly from out Waitau Road, out that way, who at Oropi, Ohawiti, they don't get a lot of attention. And they did enjoy coming into these very informal forums in here as well, and got a lot out of those too. So I don't know what the perfect mix is, but that was just feedback I've had from that side of the district for the Kaimais.
Right. Councillor Chris, Member Chris.
I'd just like really to support Tracy's comments there. I had some really good feedback from people who went to the Kaimai one. I know it might seem like it's negative perhaps to staff, but people asking questions is really what it's all about, and hopefully we can answer those in some effective manner. So, yeah.
Mayor James.
Yeah, I want to support that and thank everyone for organising them. I think they've been really great events. My question, though, was are the panel boards, the information boards, are they available online so that I and other people can check up what was presented there? I think that'd be really helpful. I was just looking under Tōwahi and I'm trying to find the Kaimai one, which unfortunately I wasn't able to make, but I can't see that information online. So it'd be really great if we can have those up there to keep the community informed.
Right. Councillor Sol, do you want to report on the Keri?
Yeah, it was a very, very well supported occasion, to be fair. And the people, again, it's reiterating what's been said. People enjoyed getting information and so on. My comment would be perhaps that it's something that, and to be honest, the way they were put together was by staff, largely, maybe exceptions in some cases with Te Puke, that it may be something that staff can take on and drag elected members and so on into it, as opposed to elected members being the people supposedly fronting it. Because it was good for council to be seen as being out there and talking staff being out there, and it takes quite a bit of work, and they're across all those subjects. That's just something I would throw in the future, as opposed to maybe necessarily being something from the forum. It becomes a real public information area for projects and events happening that council overall is dealing with. But superb, worked really well. Pleased to have it.
Councillor Granger.
Yes, I was very intrigued by something that happened at Kaimai one. Callum pinned up a plan for redoing the Maramatanga Park roundabout. Well, creating a roundabout at Maramatanga Park. And Don and I and possibly Tracy sort of said, hang on a minute, where did that come from? We'd never heard about a proposed roundabout at Maramatanga Park. And it was very targeted feedback that was elicited and the plan had been done by West Roads sometime in the past, and Callum had fished it out of his drawer, pinned it up on the wall, and he heard what the community thought about it, and it went back in the drawer. So it really cost council absolutely zero to get some really targeted feedback on an idea. It was a bad idea. So it was just a really intriguing thing that happened to that one. I thought it was really good.
Well, as chair of this committee, the forums were meant to have recommendations to come back for you to debate and to pass through. Most of the recommendations tended to be for service requests, but I found that the Kaimai one, as Councillor Coxhead has said, was really good, because we had people that we didn't normally see, and at the Te Puna Memorial Hall it was even better. Nathan Sanderson was there, and I introduced him to Luke, and I don't know where it's got to, but I've asked for the information. He wants to contribute to a footpath and to complete a footpath in the Te Puna area. And so that's the sort of thing I would expect would come back and we would know about it. And just the fact, and hopefully someone is communicating with him. I haven't got his telephone number, but I thought that that was making sure that we pick up on the issues that are really out there that people want to debate about. And the same with Craig, the principal of the school before you were convener there. He was so, and he had 11-year-old with him, and they were so concerned about the speed outside the school, and we didn't do anything with it. It just sort of dropped. And so I think we've got to make sure that we pick those issues up and bring them so that you can all be informed and debate and make sure that we work through. What's the joke?
Just on the school, I think it's a little unfair to say we didn't do anything with it. We did a great deal with that around the school speeds. The government changed the rules on this, and that's what happened.
I think that's very fair comment, Mayor James. We've been in the same for all the other speed reviews that we've done. Government keeps changing its mind, or keeps changing and changing its mind, and it makes it very confusing. But if we keep the people informed in the community, they help to understand rather than ending up blaming us. So I'll move that the information be received, and it's seconded by, oh, Rodney, you haven't spoken yet.
I can speak after it's moved if you like, but I'm happy to second. Oh, and Grant will speak as well. Okay. I'm just actually reflecting on the discussion, and I agree that the forums are very valuable on the journey we've been over the last 3 years. The first forums, the chief executive came along, quite a few staff came along, and between them and us elected members, sometimes we outnumbered the members of the public. And then we were told no staff would be attending. So I do remember one night taking notes myself and dusting off my old journalist skills. And then we've gone completely in a different direction with these forums. And I think it's been an interesting journey, but I think it's been a valuable journey. I think where we are now, even though we may not be able to do a full-on presentation mode every time, because it's a lot of work, it's actually a really valuable process. And I thank the staff for helping us through that journey in various forms, sometimes just by withdrawing support and sometimes now by putting a lot of support in. And I'd also pay particular credit to Andy Wickers, who has been running sort of a laboratory for this over in Te Puke Makatu. That we all looked rather jealously across at the first one of these forums that you had with all that information at it. When the pendulum swung back to staff involvement, and then it's now right around the district, and the comments today show, and my own experience of the forums show, they are very valuable. They are quite intensive, a lot of work, so we just have to be a little bit aware of that. But I think over the past 3 years, these forums have found a role, and it's a very valuable role. And I endorse the idea that we need to have a close look at whether we can continue them, whoever the we might be after the election.
Thank you. Councillor Daly.
Yeah, I'd like to endorse all the comments made as well. I think, like Rodney says, there's a place for every type of forum that we had over the last 3 years. I know it's evolved into something that's a lot more polished and like Rodney says, brought the staff in, made us look more like a cohesive unit perhaps. But I think there is a place for those early ones where we did get the people with a particular axe to grind. And, I was approached by certain people with certain issues in the community, and sending them to a public forum is one way of dealing with something like that. But you only get 5 minutes to speak. You don't really get any feedback. And, I can think of several instances where people came along, aired their views, and I think they were satisfied that they were heard. And that's just not possible in a formal meeting like this. So, yeah, I think going forward, and I tried to attend all the forums where possible. I might have missed a couple, but the one that was referred to, the Kaimai one in this chamber, I met a couple from Waikawa Road, Mike and Bron, and funnily enough, they will be transitioning to our ward in the next triennium with the representation review and the change of boundaries. And I've just dealing with him and going and looking at his issues. Tracy and myself sort of tag teamed a little bit with some of his service requests, but it sort of helped form my opinion on the representation review, actually, because it's clear that someone in a rural area, isolated rural area like him, he's not got the same support from a community board, and he feels a little bit disenfranchised by the council and not always getting the response he wants from a service request system or process. And when I told him about the outcome of the representation review, that he would be now included in the Te Puke community board, he fired back a response saying that he felt he was sad that he was going to lose that community forum expo opportunity, and he didn't feel that he would have that opportunity in the future through a community board. But I sort of tried to assure him that there's no reason why the community board with a much bigger catchment couldn't operate in a similar manner to what, because we did it in the previous triennium as well. The community, some of my community boards I've been on, we actually organised community forums much like the ward forums that council ran. So I'd like to see maybe a bit more of a transition back to the community board being more involved in those sort of community forums as well. But just one last point, and it says in here that no service requests were lodged at the Kaimai Ward Community Forum. And I know for a fact, unfortunately, I'm not trying to criticise anyone, that there were quite a few service requests lodged there. Both Valletta and Jess were there taking service requests. I mean, I lodged about 4 or 5 myself, so I'm not quite sure why they haven't been noted. But anyway, I'm not trying to point the finger, it's just an oversight.
Thank you. Councillor Song.
Thank you, Madam. Basically, yes, I think the big thing out of this in many ways, and I see it as an opportunity for council, a really good opportunity. I think we're getting at times from our people out there in the community, we're getting tired of being consulted on all the time, which we've basically got to do. But when you condense things like this with the projects and things that are happening, we could probably reduce some of those areas of going out there and flooding them with, if it's not this today, it's that tomorrow, etc. Plus, it showed that because there were a multitude of or multi number of projects and opportunities for them to come and comment, you got more people. So in other words, you got a good cross flow of people from it. So I think the mini expo to even super expo, it might have been considered in some cases, is really valuable. And I really encourage that the incoming council certainly looks harder at that, and it then takes away from this, oh, we saw you last week about something, or I'm you know, it creates an urgency. It's part of a whole selling thing. You've got to sell the council, how it behaves, how it's out there, it's available, and people feel of value. So that's where they were superb. Thank you.
Thank you. My only concern is Makatu and Te Puke aren't represented, and the crunch question is, do they see this committee as not worth participating in? And that's something, Jody, you might like to explore as to how they feel about the committee and whether they feel as though they're not valued here at the table, because they are, and we need that feedback and that linkage as always. Councillor Scrimgeour.
I think we do need to remember that some people have other jobs and are busy people, and it's not so much a matter of not being valued here as they just don't have the ability or opportunity to be able to come.
Well, that's true, but however, John Clements couldn't come and he has Norm Mayo in his place. So giving people experience in the community is really quite valuable in my view. It just, you never quite know when it's going to inspire them to take a step further forward. And on that cheery note, I'll put the motion, moved by Councillor Joyce, seconded by whom? Who was it? Ella? I moved it, Councillor James seconded it. Joyce. I'll put the motion in favour, will say aye, against carried. And now we come to the other one, which was. You've got to be fast. I thought it was important that you actually had a review and understood what was going on in the tourism industry. And so here's my report, and it's that trip to that fabulous cruise ship. But we met, the Mayor James and I beforehand, with the port people and understood their issues, and they're considerable. And then we had the meeting with the cruise ship people themselves. And the things that really came through mostly was we change our minds and think that if central government makes a decision to increase its costs, it doesn't matter that it's only got 3 months for the cruise ship to implement it, when in fact they're planning 2 years ahead. And so the Minister of Tourism has been onto this. And the other one was cruise ships going into Milford Sound, and there was a big study done on it, and I know people were lobbying as hard as they could, and I certainly saw Louise Upston and asked her about the issues of costing for the cruise ship industry, and because it was quite delightful seeing how much people enjoy what we have to offer. And so it means a lot of money as well, especially for the provincial centres like Napier and Tauranga. And so anyway, she has already made the decision that the cruise ships can go into Milford Sound. And that was really a serious issue because a lot of the North American ones wouldn't want to come here. So I'm happy to move my report. And
can I talk first?
Yes, of course.
I've done a number of cruises and they all have mostly came from Auckland. That's stopped now. I'm doing 3 in the next 8 months. I've got to catch 2 in Australia and 1 in Singapore. Now, the loss to the local economy is tremendous. And I'd like to pay attention to, or call attention to your comment. We need the Minister of Tourism to start laying down some sensible rules. And I'd wonder if Council could make a formal approach to the Minister of Tourism. Clowns like me aren't listened to, but outfit like the
I
council
think,
should be.
right, I think that I can honestly say she understands the issues. And Oscar, for example, he's the CEO of tourism here. And his view was that it was good to have a Minister of Tourism who was actually interested in what was happening. And so I can confidently say she's up with the play and is making some serious decisions.
I just thought a formal one in writing or however you do it would be something for them to refer to when the argument came up.
If you don't mind, I don't think we need to do that, Rachel. What's your advice?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think your usual lines of advocacy to ministers would be useful deploying without the need for a formal letter.
Okay. So you're seconding my report, Councillor Member Mayor? Okay. Any discussion? I'll put the motion. Those in favour will say aye. Against, carried. I just hope that you all have the opportunity to do that sometimes. It was good. Would you like to want tea now? We've got the housing action plan and it's quite detailed. I think we'll take a break for morning tea at the moment. So, sorry, staff, that's all right. 10:30. Okay. Councillor Joyce and we've lost Councillor Daly. So he's up to keeping his reputation up of being late. Councillor Daly, just in time. You're late. We have several reports and there's no recommendations, but presumably we can ask questions. And the first one, of course, is the Housing Action Plan. Progress report, please. Simon?
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. So I'm here to speak about the Housing Action Plan and our progress since over the last 6 months. Some of the information will be a little bit longer than that, but generally in the last 6 months, it's hard to believe. It was only 6 months ago I was sitting here in December talking about the last 6 months. Time flies. So the vision and the Housing Action Plan is that all Western Bay residents are well housed. So that's people who are living in affordable, accessible, habitable housing with security of tenure and appropriate to their life stages and differing needs.
Simon, I should have asked you, do you want to take questions as we go through, or would you like to do your report? How do you want to handle it?
Throughout is fine, whichever way members wish to.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll never go anywhere without showing people the housing continuum. So that remains very much the tool that we use when we're looking at housing and housing needs and how we're progressing with housing delivery and housing supply. So the goal is always to move people through the housing continuum from the left to the right. So if someone's in social housing, it'd be great if that person could move into either private rental or into assisted home ownership. And likewise, people moving into assisted home ownership may well at some point enter into the private market, non-assisted home ownership. So we are seeing an increase in tenures in the district. So in that sort of middle space where it's referred to as being assisted rental, assisted ownership, which is a big area of need, and also social housing and community housing. So it's really good to sort of see progress is happening, albeit we need more, but definitely good progress is happening in those spaces. So here's some photos. So I've got a lot of photos from construction sites. Some of them I took myself, so I've been skulking around construction sites, getting eyeballed by tradies, like what's she doing, who's she? So in terms of this action, this is the action around having that place-based local housing network approach. So really understanding what the needs are in a local area and having an evidence-based plan to respond to the needs in those areas. So both Te Puke and Katikati, we've seen development happening in social housing and affordable housing, and for different age groups and different cohorts. So the photo here is the first photo, so to speak, Evergreen House in Te Puke. There's a development. That photo is from, I think it's back in April, from Stuff. So it's a six unit development in Te Puke with 1 2-bedroom and 5 1-bedroom units for people aged 65 years and over with mobility issues from the social housing wait list. So that's obviously people on a low income might need wider doorways, accessible showers, etc. So that's a really important type of home to be developed. And as we know, Heron Crescent is now complete, and also Abbeyfield in Katikati is under construction. And I'll have a bit more on those later. Part of the work that we do in the housing networks is to provide up-to-date data and information about policy changes to the housing networks. So what I've just illustrated here is just some of the recent either seminars or workshops or presentations that we've given to networks. So the top one there was a presentation New Zealand Property Council held in Tauranga on the property market and what's happening with the property market. And so Craig's investment spoke to that. And the slide there, that's a little bit hard to see, but it's just an example of what their advice is on how mortgage interest rates are tracking. So you might be wanting to think about when you'd fix, even though they're going down at the moment, they will go up again. And also we really try and work holistically across council. So I asked Nigel Mogford, who's the manager of building services, to speak to Katikati Housing Network on the suite of changes that are happening around building reforms, because they are potentially quite significant. So as you'll see, these numbers aren't, it's not 1 to 29. I'm just highlighting sort of key aspects of the housing action plan as we go through. So this slide shows, you can see all those lines with all the different territory authorities or local government authorities or building consent authorities, but mostly councils across New Zealand. MB now keep data on building consent timeframes. So each quarter we can look up and see how we're tracking. So that's showing the most recent quarter, January to March. And at the moment we're tracking 98 to 100% compliance with a 20-day timeframe. And we've also had a business improvement process around resource consenting, and we're meeting statutory timeframes between.
Can you
90 to
elaborate
90
on that?
Oh,
The resource consenting, can you elaborate on that?
so that's the timeframe. So we have a statutory timeframe that has to be met in the RMA, and so if that goes over time, it increases the holding costs for developers and whatnot. And so for us to have streamlined our process so that now we're moving according to those statutory timeframes the majority of the time is a really desirable outcome.
Good.
So in MB, you can look up each quarter how different councils are tracking, including ourselves, obviously.
Sorry, through you, Madam Chair. Building consenting 98 to 100% compliance. Do we know what the average time is from the time the person first applies to the time that they get their building consent signed off? There is a hearsay, I guess, that, you know, on day 19 it gets sent back to you with a question, and then you get another 20 days. Do we know actually what the overall time? If I applied for a building consent today, what is the sort of average time that takes to?
Thank you. The statistics are on MB. So there's quite a suite of set of numbers on MB. So I've included this one here, but there is actually detail for each council, the average number of days that it takes, or I can provide it to, I can access that information and provide it through.
Okay, so I just, so if I go to MB, I could find this information out.
Yes.
Cool, thank you.
Rachel, would you like to comment?
Just to add, Madam Chair, that our building services team does collect the average time elapsed, so all the total time elapsed, and then averages it. But from a statutory compliance perspective, what is excluded from the 20-day timeframe is the period of time for the applicant to respond, or the designer to respond to the requests for further information. And that is a signal on the quality of building consent applications that is coming into the council, and remains a sort of perennial issue for our building services staff to progress. However, what I will say is that as we move toward more uniform designs, particularly for the likes of group builders' homes, that has had a significant impact on the average processing time, because we can treat them more uniformly.
So this slide here shows percentage increase between 1996 to 2023, the percentage increase in house prices and in house rent costs, and the third one being household incomes. So we did some analysis, or got someone to do some really in-depth analysis for us, just to see, well, how things tracking. Like, we sort of know from the media and census data that housing affordability remains to be a significant issue across New Zealand and indeed in our district. But we want that evidence base. We really want to understand, well, where is it at? So ideally, what we should be looking at in an ideal world is that each of those columns would be even, or at least closer to each other. So the fact that household prices are way up there with over 400% increase. Rents have also increased a fair bit, and then household incomes are sitting there. This diagram sort of speaks to when people say about housing affordability.
Simon, I've got two questions. Councillor Sol and then Councillor Joyce.
Thank you. And this is an interesting graph to look at, but its age is quite old, 23. Is there a reason? Is this the only information that you could access? Because I would like to think maybe it's starting to move, hopefully in the direction you're talking, but.
That's a really good question. Thank you. We're relying on census data a lot of the time. So there can be a lag. My sense is the general position would be very similar. We've heard a little bit about rents maybe stabilising. There's a lot more houses on the market for sale at the moment, etc. But I suspect that the general trend would remain as that, particularly with incomes not really increasing. I mean, we know the challenges at the moment economically. It's tricky.
Councillor Joyce.
A similar vein. I mean, that's a bucket. If you know what I mean, that's a snapshot in time. What we really need is a flow. We need to know how it's changing. Incomes are reported quarterly with various measures from Statistics New Zealand. Now, whether that's reported down to the level of our district is a different question. And I know Statistics New Zealand do an annual survey on rents and house prices. So, and the census is going away. So we're going to have to find a new way to look at it. But yeah, I'd be interested to know how that's changing now more than what it's done, frankly, since 1996, because we know we're in. The question is, are we making progress out of it?
Sadly, yes. But absolutely having the most up-to-date data is key. Yeah.
Councillor Coxey.
I know this looks stark against, the house price increase compared to household incomes. But being in the property market, business myself, and if you go and listen to these, invest all your money in property and you'll make millions and all the rest of it, those kind of rah-rah events, they will always work on the basis that your property value will increase by 100% every 7 to 10 years. So when you look at that, we're actually, based on their logic, we're actually running behind, thankfully.
Could I just comment that we know that the median income should be 3 times the value of the house, and how far are we out? At 5 times it's unaffordable. How bad are we, and what impact is that going to have on people not being able to own their own home?
That is a really good question. I will skip forward a couple of slides to have the answer, or part of the answer. As we know, housing is really complex. So this table is a really in-depth piece of analysis a gentleman by the name of Ian Mitchell did for us. So he used a range of data sources, mainly from Stats New Zealand, but he can model, like you can sort of develop a bit of a formula, if you like, and model data. So if you look, there's a lot in this table, but what it shows down the bottom is the really close numbers is the whole range of household incomes. So if you're going to buy a house at 100% of that house value, and it costs $700,000, you would require a household income of $205,000. But what the table shows is if you go right back to the left-hand side, because this table speaks to shared home ownership or assisted home ownership schemes. So if you were going to purchase a home in partnership, say with Habitat for Humanity or New Zealand Housing Foundation, or you own other shared home ownership schemes, you would only require $123,000 household income if you were purchasing 60% of the value. So that's great for a cohort of 1,300 households in our sub-region. What we want to do is size what is that cohort that potentially could be assisted to get into home ownership. So what we're seeing is around 1,300 households could afford to get into shared home ownership in the sub-region. So that's TCC and Western Bay. In terms of what that means for people who don't have that household income, because our average household income, the median household income here is a lot lower than that. So there's certainly still a cohort that are finding increasing affordability constraints. So if you think back to the housing continuum, looking at ways where housing can be provided that might be below market rate rent, some of the likes of RSA units, Abbey Field House. Some of those are specifically for seniors, some of them aren't, as well as social or community housing opportunities.
Right. Tracy, did you
Very
have another
current.
question?
I just think this lacks a little bit of context only because the situation of the people who are purchasing and borrowing that money, let's say they're borrowing 700,000, that very much depends on whether they have children or a partner as well. So that comes into it with interest rates the way they are coming down at the moment. Conceivably, a single person on their own 30 years to pay the mortgage off could borrow 700,000 of $123,000 income. And this is very much interest rate dependent as well. So there's a lot of, like huge variables in here in terms of what's possible.
Absolutely. It's not A plus B equals C. So in the bottom right-hand corner there, he's had a bit of a stab at just looking at the proportion of couples. And it's sort of like in terms of who are these people that could potentially afford to buy a home with a little bit of a leg up, so to speak, horse rider. So approximately 2/3 of households have no dependents. And 1/3 are couples with children. And he's also broken it down in different age groups and ethnic groups. But you're absolutely right, Tracy. There's interest rates. There's massive variable.
And amount of deposit as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. Bank settings, consumer confidence, etc.
Member Mayo.
Yeah, I just must reflect the approaches I get from my people. I've had 2 people come to me, single people, in tears in the last week, reminding me that their income is going to go up a small percentage and the rates are going to go up 2 or 3 times that same percentage. And I'm reminded about Einstein's 8th wonder of the world about compounding interest. So I just want everyone to bear in mind the pain that is out there, because it is real. It doesn't affect me, but it affects a lot of people. There's 72 people in where I am. Classic Builders built it. I think about half of them are single people living on their own, and it's a real issue. And I just want to emphasise it. I've been asked to emphasise it. Sorry if I sound negative, but I have to do this.
Thank you. Simone. But I must say, though, for young couples who want to live here and own a home, it is really difficult. And that ratio between median price and median income is one that's internationally recognized as the way to assess whether it's affordable or not. And in my book, we are unaffordable. And the 70 square meters will help considerably those who are young and those who are much older, because it gives an opportunity to have some variety. So are you having any questions about it, Simone, at the moment?
about the changes to the minor dwelling 17%. There is quite a level of interest in it. So we have, we're really waiting on the central government, you know, when the implementation. But what we're hearing is that 75 square metre or below will be enabled in a way that it's not currently. Exactly. A lot of people will sort of use the term the devil's in the detail, which it is, and we're not quite sure what the detail will look like. But that does seem to provide one option that could alleviate, because we've always said housing, you know, we need a suite of housing options. And I know when I talked about our vision, that might sound like fancy words, but those words, you know, do mean something in terms of having a variety of housing available, different sizes, different price points for different life stages. So having smaller dwellings available to rent or purchase. Yeah, it makes sense. And what we are seeing in the district though, is there has been an increase in what we call types of tenures. So I think that's really, even though we need more, it's good to see that, because that is part of the solution. So having shared home ownership, having social housing, having the likes of Abbeyfield or RSA units, our elder housing units. We're seeing some innovations in Te Puke with a shared home ownership for an iwi group there, affordable rental through Bay of Plenty Housing Equity Fund as a separate program. So when we talk about having different tenures, those are some of the examples of outside just private rental and private purchase. So that does make a difference. We'll just grow those things, yeah, more and more.
Thank you.
Oops, wrong button. Turning off my mic. I'll get in trouble from Portaway. This feels like a bit of a jump, but I'll just always give a plug around warm, dry, healthy homes. In the report, I've listed the outcomes that Sustainability Options Limited have achieved over the last, well, year to date, financial year to date, also known as 20 degrees. Full disclosure, last year when I did the update in December to you all, I did actually talk about the 5-year post-intervention evaluation that was done. So the reason why I've got that up there again is that it's just so significant, the outcomes that can be achieved by just, you know, a healthy home intervention, both within a year and 5 years afterwards, in terms of less hospitalisations per person, whether it be children or adults, less absence for children away from school, and some increase in wages and less need for benefits.
Simon, how is this funded? It's a really worthwhile, but how is it funded?
Through a range of avenues. So part of how it's funded is through DHB or Health New Zealand, through the philanthropic funders. We provide through the long-term plan some funding for our district specifically. So yeah, a range of ways. And also the organisation who run 20 Degrees, they work really closely with the construction sector and get donated goods, you know, like roofing materials to replace a roof, white goods, heaters, etc. And also families themselves are required to do some of the work. So they may actually, one of the examples, I think it was in the report, is that a gentleman, through getting the information from 20 Degrees, applied for funding for a heat pump and through central government and received that funding. So it's also about encouraging families and individuals to take on board the learnings and continue that, using that knowledge and ideally spreading it across their community.
Simon, within the retirement villages, there's an awful lot of appliances and carpets and curtains that are taken out when there is a change of ownership. And it's, I just think it's a lost opportunity for a lot of people, builders, to actually recycle them into
Yes.
people's homes.
Yes, thank you.
Papakainga Housing would be absolutely delighted with some of the things that I see that are just tossed into a bin and people they're not being used.
Also bathroom units and things like that. It's
Oh,
all sorts of-
absolutely,
yes,
a lot.
ridiculous.
Thank you.
Can I leave that with you?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because they do each early winter, they do curtain heater blanket drives. Because having good curtains, as we know, makes big difference to keeping a home warm and denoting heaters, etc. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll just add to that. Believe it or not, one of the really significant issues with trying to repurpose those larger items that you were talking about is where you store them in the meantime. So Sustainability Options, who's the deliverer for 20 Degrees, have been looking for somewhere to be able to just store things and then be able to distribute them out. So the logistics around that are quite significant and are actually not that easy to solve at the moment. So I just wanted to point that out because this also aligns in some ways with the work that Kerry's team is doing around the reuse and recovery centres and what the future for those might be as well. Yeah, because you're exactly right. The waste stream from things like the retirement villages and the ability to reuse that stuff is massive. The potential there is huge. And we're not really well set up yet to capitalise on that, but we definitely are working on it. So
we could have a recycled pack house converted.
Because I'm aware I'm probably taking up a fair bit of time. I'll just have a wee plug for awareness around temperature of sleeping rooms. So this came through bedrooms, through from the research, the 5-year post-intervention analysis. So we know now from both New Zealand Research, Otago University, but other medical researchers. So anything 16 degrees and below, you're starting to have health impacts. So if you think about children with asthma, so having a room temperature, sleeping temperature of between 18 and 20 degrees, they see, say a child might have had 3 hospitalizations over winter for asthma, going to 0 hospitalizations over winter for asthma. But it's not just for children, it's for adults as well. So anyone that has a risk around cardiovascular disease or respiratory disease, each temperature below 18 degrees is increasing risk. And 12 degrees and below, our blood thickens. There's really good evidence around this. And you can imagine how that could increase, blood pressure, increase the risk of stroke, etc. Certainly it's been a really eye-opener for me, because I always sleep with the window open and I like it cold, but it's bad for you. So I thought I'd just put a plug in there because people may not be aware. It's the air. It's the air, not the your body temperature. That's the temperature of the air.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Ray.
I just wanted to make a comment, if I could, about this one. This one really, it's really close to my heart because obviously I come from a low, area, and I actually suffered from thickening of blood and blood clots to the lungs, all sorts of things like that. So I really, really love the work that they do. I'd love to see it, continue and just thrive because, as you said, Simone, is that people I don't think are aware, because there's nobody that I've seen that would purposely put their children health at risk, and I think that once you become aware, and people are there to offer you support, it's just a huge weight off your shoulders. Because when you don't have money and you don't have necessarily the greatest living conditions and everything, like any little thing that happens, it's just the end of the world, So love this program. I don't see anybody else doing any better work than this in this field.
Thank you, Laura. Councillor Sol.
Thank you. So I just got a couple of brief questions. One is, and it's something that directly affects us and our business here, and that is, of course, our rates increases, etc., and where this is going at present. The rates rebate system basically has given people at the top end $16 a year extra to what they were getting previously, and they've increased the threshold, but basically there's still so many people on or below the old threshold. So I just look at this as something that I would like to know what you're feeling. It's really nothing to tie you down, but where do you see things going as far as how many people are going to drop from that band of just sort of keeping their heads or noses above water and are going to drop down into the poorer housing area, or not be able to afford to be where they are? And how do you see the supply of housing to cope with them that are dropping and they're going? That's one question. And the other one is, what do you see as the effects of the Healthy Homes situation when that comes into effect 1 July on our homing situation again? Because I guess that's going to put people, either landlords, into a position where they'll break the law, or they will, I just wonder, what do you see? Because you're working in it, that's really the thing, and you're probably seeing the trends as you're going, as opposed to us just sitting here and hearing now and again.
Thank you. In terms of actual figures on people experiencing increasing financial stress, I don't have an actual figure on it. Jody may. We certainly know anecdotally from talking to people in community centres, food banks.
Probably just more your feeling of where it's going. I mean, I can't tie you to anything, and it's just, as I say, you're at the coalface, so you start to see where things are moving.
Yeah. I think there is some really good what they call insights that have come out of Ministry for Housing and Urban Development around, in particular, when people move into the fixed income stage of life, so pretty much 65 years and over, what that is going to start to look like in the future, and how that is going to impact on people's ability to live in their current housing or pay rent. Those numbers are pretty stark. I think what we are trying to do with the work that you're all supporting around this table is get ahead of that a little bit if we can, with the sort of work that Simone's talked about that we're doing, which is trying to provide for a range of tenures and trying to provide for that opportunity as you move through different life stages to be able to choose the housing that is going to work for you and your income level. So that's probably, I can share that work with you from MHUD. It's a really good read. It doesn't come up with a whole lot of solutions, but it does sort of set out, what that future kind of looks like. I think in terms of the second one around the healthy housing standards coming in, and I don't want to speak over the top of Simone on this, but if any of you in this room are landlords, you'll know that good landlords are not concerned at all about those standards coming in, because that's what should be provided. So for those who are saying, oh, it's an issue, maybe they shouldn't be in the landlord market then.
They're certainly experiencing that in Dunedin now.
So redeveloping our council's elder housing in Katikati is action number 9. So I went back to Google Maps and Google Street View, and this is what I came up with. So the internet's very handy. So we've gone from that to this. And as people are aware, tenants, we had the blessing last week, and tenants, most of the tenants have moved in, and just hearing anecdotally from the staff who've been supporting people moving in, there's a lot of excitement. People going around looking at each other's units. My unit's better than yours, which is just lovely. It's just lovely to hear that excitement.
Could I ask a question?
What we've found though, which is if you look at Katikati, we've got Heron Crescent, 26 units. and Abbeyfield House, which will be finished towards the end of this year, which is 14 units or bedrooms, and both for over 65s. But I know from talking to the staff who did the interviews for tenancies for Heron Crescent, and I've also spoken to the person just last week who's involved in the tenant selection process for the Abbeyfield House. They're saying a lot of people who are applying who are in very difficult situations. So we're absolutely hitting the mark in terms of what the need is. And I can't, speak to specifics because of privacy, but, examples like people living in caravans, living in really insecure tenures. So an older couple living in a rental property where, no, I can't go into details. But anyway, really insecure rental situations, which if you're over 65, that's very, very, very difficult.
You're vulnerable.
Vulnerable, exactly. And you've been renting at a certain price for quite some time. You've lived locally for many, many years, and going into the rental market again with higher costs and poor availability of rentals. So absolutely, yeah, hitting the mark.
Right. Member Mayo, you've got a question.
Yeah, that's a very nice facility and Caticat's proud of it. But if you're over 65 and you've got a crook hip and you're trying to carry your heavy groceries upstairs, I tell you what, it's quite a trial. The Ward Ratepayers Chair asked for a lift to be installed somewhere and didn't get a very good response, but it's still possible. I know because I've worked on myself. It's still possible to fit one halfway down the back there somewhere. I would like, on behalf of the older people that are going to be residents here, I would like to look at that again if that's possible. I don't think it's too late.
It's ring fenced the elderly housing financially, and we ran out of money, and so we've got the flats built, and it's something that you're going to look at in the future, Jody, or not at all?
That wasn't correct,
No.
Madam Chair.
Oh.
So I'll let Jody correct it.
Oh, sorry. Do you want to?
So the money was not the issue around lifts. Just to be really clear, money was not the issue around lifts.
Then why didn't we get them?
Yeah. No, true.
It's in the works.
Yes, so through you, Madam Chair, we do have what we call provisioning to do some further work on that with the platform lifts. And so we'll be working that through as we have the tenants move in to the facility. I think I would make the point that we are doing a really good job with our tenant placement, and we're not having tenants on the second floor that have mobility issues. So that's the first point. Kerry's team are doing a fantastic job with the tenant placement strategy. So that deals with some of those issues, but we do also have provisioning, which means we have the funding available for the platform lifts, and we'll continue working on that.
Councillor Daly.
Yeah, Simon, I was just wondering about tenant placement. Are they all locals? I mean, we obviously needed to give priority to the ones that were displaced initially, but the additional units, are we getting application, or are they all locals, or is there some coming from across the district or out of the district?
There are a fair percentage of locals. There are some people coming from other areas of the district, but had historical connection to Katikati. That's probably as much as I can say at this stage. We'll be doing a meeting with the staff who've been involved in the tenancy selection just to get a better picture of the cohort and what situations they were seeing when they were interviewing. So yeah, we will have sort of richer information, but definitely some locals and some people within the district. So I couldn't help myself. Oh.
Could I ask, what's the interpretation of the name? Why isn't it in English underneath? What does it mean?
Oh, the meaning. I was told on the day of the blessing.
So the name of the units is Te Ahuru Mowai or Hiria. It means the cloak, the welcoming village of Hiria. Hiria is Celia, who is a ancestor from Ngāi Tamawhāriua, who actually used to live on the site there in the Heron Crescent units. She married one of the first Ulster, one of the descendants of the Ulster settlers. And so the name was chosen because of that marriage and that relationship there. Hiria or Celia did not have children. So this was and she was also a beautiful musician, and she wrote a lot of the waiata that are now precious to Ngāi Tamawhāriua. And so this was their way to honour her memory, and they saw it as just an excellent connection of the Ulster ancestry and the Māori ancestry in Katikati.
Is it possible to have a storyboard telling that story up there?
Absolutely, that's what we are intending to do. We haven't completed it yet, but we will definitely be doing that. Yeah, it is
Would be
a
helpful.
beautiful name.
Thank you. Thank you, Simone.
Thank you. So it's really great too to see the progress of housing on whenua Māori. So in the action plan, we have actions around iwi hapu across different areas of the district. So for Te Aoraki Tai, staff have been working closely, doing feasibility, very detailed feasibility. So I threw up some of the, or most of the report types that are needed, and some of you will be familiar with these processes. So when we talk about doing feasibility, it's actually a very in-depth process.
Right.
So what's great to see is that those feasibility studies are in, and there's really good opportunity now for people to position themselves into the next steps of funding, infrastructure, and home build, and it'll probably be a suite of funding opportunities used to do that. For Tuapiro Marae.
We've got a question here, Simone. Oh, right.
For Tuapiro Marae, they've been working on a project to construct 10 kaumātua units, and the first of, cut a long story short, progress is happening. So the first of 10 homes was delivered to the site last week. We supported Tuapiro also with some feasibility. And so once the 10 homes are in, I'm sure they'll be looking at, or already looking at, further housing opportunities on their whenua.
May I ask, where's the funding coming from? Is the government supporting this big time? Is that through Tama Pūtaka?
TPK using Facebook as an informant, that's a little bit embarrassing, isn't it? But I believe TPK have been a significant funder.
Right.
And they're transportable homes, so they've constructed off-site and being brought to the site.
On Tangatu Road, the little cottages that are there behind the marae are quite adequate and quite beautiful, and we don't see them anymore. So to see this locking around marae in Tuapiro, I think is really quite special. Councillor Coxhead, are you ready?
Gosh, got a bit of a collection here. We allocated 700,000 from the Better Off funding towards feasibility studies. Two questions I've got actually. One, so just answer them both together or whatever. So where are we at with that? Because this is TPK will be funding, like providing funding or loans, etc. But are they also contributing to feasibility? Because I thought that's what we were doing. And maybe we've run out of money, I'm not sure. And my other question, I was just a bit curious about the archaeological survey and assessment effects. So presuming it's on Te Arawa land, who does that? Because who does that for Te Arawa? Because it's generally like around our area, and Pirirako does it for our region. So, yeah, just wondering.
Do you know who did? Sorry, through you, Madam Chair. So the archaeological survey and assessment of effects is done by a professional archaeologist. In the case of these feasibility studies, I'm not sure who that was, but we can find out for you. Usually, Bridget Gallagher does a lot of this work, generally in the western part of the district. I'm not sure if she was the archaeologist here, but we'll find that out. Yeah. Oh,
How much
in
funding have we
terms
got
of-
left from the Better Off funding?
But that has all been allocated across all of these, yes. So that funding is now spent, and I think from the feasibility studies that have been completed, there are around about 250 homes that can be realised from those 8 sites. Does that sound about right? And the next trick is to get some funding for the infrastructure and be able to build the homes.
So ongoing feasibility, will that be funded by TBK? No, okay.
So through you, Madam Chair, from this point with the feasibility studies, the detail is enough that those Māori land trusts or the post-treaty settlement entity, or the ones who had the feasibility studies completed for their sites, they will be able to lodge for a resource consent application now. So there's no further feasibility study work required. Where we'd be looking for some of that central government funding to come online is really around the infrastructure, and that's where discussions with Minister Potaka will be really useful, and just trying to get an understanding of what that funding looks like now. So previously the government had the Whaikainga Whaioranga Fund, and there's some parameters changing around that, but we do know that there will still be funding avenues available, which will enable these to progress to the next stage. But everything from a feasibility point of view is complete, and they are good to go on that side, which is a fantastic place for them to be in.
I think this is really good. It's a pity we couldn't invite Tama Putaka to come to our meeting and understand the need that's out there and how the government could constructively and financially support rather than leaving it totally on our shoulders. The FinCos that we are reducing, we have to keep an eye on that, because that then is being paid by somebody else. And so it's critical that we have some support, because we cannot go on expecting that developers who have to pay significant FinCos are subsidising others. And I just think we need to make sure that we don't penalise other homeowners by putting the money in the wrong place too often. So is it possible that we could invite someone like him to come, because he is social housing and there is a need? And I just put it out there. I'm not sure that anybody else would agree with me, but I think an invitation to him would be really quite special. We can only receive information, so I just leave it with you, Jody.
I'm aware of time, so I'll try and speed up. So on FinCo reductions, so we have a couple of actions in the action plan around that, and this one is enabling social and community housing. So Tauranga Community Housing Trust recently accessed a FinCo reduction for 13-unit development on McLaughlin Drive in Te Puke.
And Simon, I've got a question from Councillor Daly.
Yes, Simon, you've got a point A there, the Te Arawa feasibility studies. I'm just wondering, have you got any specific examples of projects or possibilities that can be progressed? I'm talking to Ray Weehapi recently, and he's very keen to progress the Lenahan Drive subdivision, and I'm just wondering if our district plan is causing any problems there. I know we've talked about the categorisation for Papakainga land and whether or not the urban areas are fit under that category. We haven't made any changes yet, I don't think, that enable that fully, or does he not require that?
Thank you. Excuse me. So the different blocks, the eight blocks, do have different zoning. So as you know, Lenahan Drive is within an urban area. It is potential to have quite a significant yield, which is really exciting. perhaps Jody, if you want to talk to the zoning and what it will mean in terms of consenting generally.
Yeah, so through you, Madam Chair, the Lenahan Drive property, Lenahan Drive land is zoned residential and it is in general title. So there's no barrier, there's no district plan barriers as such to the development of that site, other than what would be, obviously you still need to go through a resource consent process, but there's no barriers there at all. There's also no land title barriers either, because the land is in general title.
Is that considered Papakainga or is it just general development?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think that would be worked through the resource consent process, and that would be a decision that would get made at that point. Yeah.
In progress, as I understand, Ray is very keen to move on it, but from a council point of view, is it looking positive?
Through you, Madam Chair, the next steps in the process is really up to the Māori Land Trusts. So when they are ready to go, they can then lodge their resource consent applications. We are still looking at how we can support them collectively to make those approaches to other funders to support infrastructure, and having a collective approach around that. But in terms of their actual projects and progressing those, that sits with those Māori Land Trusts to take that action when they're ready.
And I guess, are they considering a shared?
Could you just speak into your mic a little bit, Grant? Can't hear you.
Are they considering a shared equity scheme for those properties? I mean, can you just tell us the number exactly of titles we're talking about there?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't have the exact numbers that were on Lenahan Drive for the feasibility study, but we do have that, so we can provide that to you. Whether or not they look to put in place a shared equity program there, I think that's something that they, Te Kapua Waitaha, would be interested in, but I'm not aware that they've done any work around that at this stage.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you very much. And so the next one is around supporting new project opportunities as they emerge. And I guess this is just reporting progress. So sometimes, I think I've sort of flagged this before, and as the committee would be aware, the time frame for talking about housing to actually putting a spade in the ground and having a roof over your head could be as many as 8 years, 10 years, depending on the scale of development and funding access, etc. So Abbeyfield Western Bay Planning, their 14-bedroom home is under construction, and they'll be opening towards the end of this year, completion in October, and probably tenanting in November. And as I've mentioned before, they are the people who are applying. They are seeing people who have significant housing need. The type of people seeking to live in an Abbeyfield sort of house is you're living a lot like closer quarters with other people. You have shared meals, 3 meals a day, shared meals. You have your own bedroom, ensuite space, but you can see that it would be a different option for people compared to, say, living in Heron Crescent, which is independent living, versus people that might choose, if they can afford to do so, to live in a retirement village setting or remain home living independently. So it just goes back to needing a range of options for people as their life stages change.
Councillor Daly.
Simon, the Abbeyfield one, I mean, they were one of the first groups that came to talk to us about different housing models, I guess, like quite a few years ago now. But I understand that they've got a slightly different model to other housing developments where they have shared facilities. I'm not sure if they've followed through with that, to what extent they followed through with that, but it would be interesting to maybe get another presentation or maybe even a site visit would be really cool to look at what they've developed and what it looks like from that point of view, and also, are they considering any other developments across the district?
Thank you. I'll talk to Carol.
Thank you.
I don't know if there was a question there in terms of the model. It's definitely sharing kitchen, lounge room facilities. Meals are provided as part of the model. So there's a housekeeper that lives on site.
So
Just say
Me,
it's a
James.
very specific model, the Abbeyfield model. So it's not like they try different models all over the place. It's a very specific one. So it's 14 units with shared communal areas. So that's how they do things.
I was just wondering,
It's flat sharing for older people.
do the shared facilities, are they, every single person shares the same facility, or they've got small unit shared facilities?
So everyone, so there's 14 bedrooms and everyone has their own ensuite. And then you would share laundry facilities, and there's only one kitchen and dining room space where all the meals are provided by the housekeeper. And you're required to be capable of living independently. So part of the selection process is that you need to provide a medical certificate from your GP that you can live independently, although you can access in-home support services that anyone else can to help you sustain independence, but it's certainly not, residential care. It's like a flat sharing arrangement for older people, which suits some people well, but not everyone.
Councillor Sol.
Yeah, I think I ought to add there that each unit has its own entrance. So they go outside. So if they own a vehicle or whatever, they go, they have total independence. They don't have to go through a main door into the facility. Each one is to be independent as a person looking after themselves. And that's it. The only other area I actually thought they only offered 2 meals a day and you had to look up. But anyway, that's beside the point. But I think it's very independent living, sharing some common facilities.
So I think, Simon, if anybody wants to know more, they can approach you at lunchtime.
Absolutely. Thank you. So this action is around a different sort of type of housing that we've talked about enabling through FinCo reductions. So community housing providers. So as we know, New Zealand Housing Foundation is a community housing provider, and they are going through the process of preparing paperwork for FinCo reductions. They've already have consent for a number of homes, so they're not applying for FinCo reductions for the entire development. It's for a small proportion, is my understanding at this stage, in Mokoroa. And I guess I've just popped the housing continuum back up there to just sort of say again how the goal is to help people get people into home ownership, help them progress through the housing continuum. We know that by providing access to home ownership, that creates a lot better educational outcomes for children going into adulthood. So it actually has a return on, economic return, so to speak. So these are photos now of the show home. So the first home that's been constructed. So in the first stage, they have 28 homes, and 4 of them are 4-bedroom homes, and the rest are 3-bedroom homes. Throughout that development, there'll be a proportion which will be sold in the private market, and a proportion that will be shared home ownership. So you can just see there the the style of home, the fittings, etc.
Councillor Granger, you have a question?
I do, yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Had a wander down there on the weekend and it's looking very flash and good to see the progress. But my question is about, I'd like to understand a little bit more about the ownership structures that they're going there. I notice on our maps that there are properties down there, and one of them is 4.47 metres wide, according to the map. I mean, it's a very tiny, thin property. So how does that work? That it's a separate title on the...
Through you, Madam Chair. Apologies, Councillor Granger. I don't have the context for that to be able to answer that specific question, but we can talk about it afterwards and have a look at what you're talking about.
What is the ownership structure? Are there going to be row houses and communal body corporate unit titles, or what are they aiming for down there?
So that's a question I can answer, but I'll need to go and find out. I don't have that detail here.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Joyce?
Yeah. Just interested to know what level of demand they've seen. You know, are they being flooded with inquiries, or are they, yeah, because it is a new concept for our area. I know it's been done in Auckland and other places. So just really wondering how the market is taking this, because it's quite an exciting area, innovation for people who can't get their deposits together.
Lizard news on, I like to have mixed medium in my presentations. I'm a bit old school. This is the same my age. So Lizard news, 17th of June. So an ad from New Zealand Housing Foundation. So they sort of, you know, surprise yourself with shared own ownerships. I think they are really encouraging people to think outside the square, because a lot of people might think, I'll never be able to afford to buy my own.
There's a lot of people like that. I guess the question is, what is the result of the advertising, not what is the advertising?
Sure, I just couldn't resist.
Member Norm?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Member Norm?
Oh, thank you. I'm very much in favour of this social help, housing and helping low-income people, very much in favour of it. But Winston Churchill once said that governments and councils can't give money to someone that they haven't taken off someone else first. So I just want to be sure that it doesn't distort the other struggling people that are doing their best and paying their full FinCos. As long as that balance is there, that's my question, then I'm happy. I need assurance of that, please.
So through you, Madam Chair, I think we did talk about the FinCo reduction briefly previously. The subsidisation there does not come from other developers. That's really important. I think it's one of those things that will sort of come out in the wash as we work through looking at how much the FinCo reduction is and where that's going to be made up from, because just remembering that any of those calculations you're doing now when you're looking out at capacity over 20 years, it's not an exact science. So it's not until you sort of get towards the end of that period that you'll understand exactly how much you need to collect and how much capacity is remaining in your network. So we would see with some of these reductions, there is no need to pick up a subsidy on that. So for example, with Papakainga, the FinCo reduction there, the contribution would be to things like roading or recreation and leisure facilities. Now we're not going to get to the end of that period and fall off a cliff because we suddenly don't have enough funding for the next active reserve, because the capacity works in a different, it's not an exact science in terms of the capacity that that asset can actually hold. So that's stuff that we just need to continue to work through. But the one thing that I can say categorically is that we do not load those FinCos, that FinCo reduction onto other developers. We do not do that.
Next question, Simon, just about finished?
Councillor Joyce, I'm happy to find out details about how their demand is going. I do know from a You-Own shared home ownership scheme that was run probably a couple of years ago now, and also Kāinga Ora's home ownership, shared home ownership schemes have seen really good uptake. But I'll inquire with New Zealand Housing Foundation what's. Just very quickly, so build to rent is coming to our sub-region. So New Ground Capital and now Purpose Capital partnered with Mike Greer Homes to deliver what will be around 45 units of build to rent in Buretta or Otumoetai. It's really exciting. I know it's not in our district, but it means it's coming to the sub-region, and really hoping that we can get that tenure type also into our district. And I've arranged to meet with Purpose Capital to just have a yarn about the work that we're doing, and yeah, do they see their work moving into other areas?
Simon, one of the things that when it comes to renting is there needs to be some social support. And we definitely had a problem out at Mokoroa adjoining Western Avenue, and the social problems require some serious support out there in the community. I'm just leave it at that. I don't think there's a problem at the moment, but there has definitely been. Councillor Coxhead, do you have a question?
Oh, just looking at the blurb on this. So presumably this is like a unit trust funding it, isn't it? So investors, long-term investors go and put money into it, or it's a property trust or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, good idea.
Whoops.
So we've just got 2 slides left.
We're actually getting some credit there.
So both of these slides are giving council credit. So this one is around modern dwellings or tiny homes. So the action is around looking at ways to perhaps, enable that type of housing. So since, writing the Housing Action Plan, central government, as we touched on earlier, are now looking at how to enable dwellings 70 square metres and smaller. So that's absolutely watch the space. It doesn't include tiny homes though. And those pictures there are from articles that were in December last year from the Tiny Home Association. Was what staff have done, have developed up a very clear guideline around tiny homes, so that for people to understand what do I need to do, whether if I've got a building on wheels or a tiny home that's not on wheels. So there you go. The feedback has been very positive.
Could I just comment there? Dan Gordon, who's the mayor of Waimakariri, North Canterbury, has just announced yesterday that they're doing district scheme review and have allowed 1,500 houses to be built in about 3 or 4 areas in Waimakariri. And we do structure plans. Do you think that when the government changes and allows us more freedom, that we will go for a district scheme review at that stage to allow more land to be made available? Rachel, question.
Spatial plans?
I think we're going to debate that at the time.
Yeah.
So
Kevin Marshall, please.
I just raised that as an example.
Last slide. Hey! So Kaimai Terraces, which is a development out in Mokoroa, won a merit award at the New Zealand Property Council Awards, would have been 2 weeks ago now. So see some familiar faces there. So that's a development that was done in partnership with council. Again, this just is, how long it takes. Oh, we'll hurry up. How long it takes from, having the conversations and looking at the land availability through to fruition and homes being built and people moving into them. So things can take a while, but it's built now and they're still selling the last few of the units, but it has a really nice open space. And in terms of design, in conjunction with that sort of high density is a really good approach to take. So congratulations to council.
You're looking very impressive there, Med James. Just an observation.
Thank you. I'll just share the love. Miriam's looking pretty good too. So.
So that's it. Yes, Chris. You right? Okay, thank you very much, Simon.
Thank you.
And the next one is the Facilities and Community Fund. Jason, that's over to you.
Morena, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Jason Crummer, the Senior Recreation Planner here at the Western Bay. Firstly, with this report, I have to extend my apologies for how long it has taken for this report to get to this committee. Understanding it's been nearly 12 months since we made our decisions. In fact, today is 12 months since we made our decisions on this, being the 25th of June.
Rachel?
Can I just clarify the reason why though? And I think you've it's correct, Jason, it has taken a long time to get here, but it was as a consequence of the October Community Committee meeting from last year being cancelled. And then the matter just needed some reminding to get back on the agenda. That's the reason why.
I didn't cancel it, by the way. Jason.
For purpose of time, I take this report as read, and I am more than happy to take any of your questions.
Yeah, James?
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge, I don't think it's in the report, but the working party of Councillor Wickers, Councillor Thwaites and Councillor Henry, who worked through these and chose the projects to support. I'd also mention that perhaps one of the triggers for wanting this to come back was I attended the opening of the building community hub at Summerhill, which is a lovely, lovely new building, and was told that we'd put some money towards it. So that was that was kind of the trigger. But like it's great to have these facilities supported and that we can contribute in a smallish way towards them. And thank you to staff for making that happen. So thank you.
Thank you. Member Chris.
My name's not Mike. It's Chris. Look, when I read this, I'm a bit green as well as, you know, like this is a new exercise for me. The first time I've read a report like this, but I looked through it and I saw the first little bits and I thought, this is great. You know, and I read the eligibility things to ensure that we're spending this on intended purposes. And I read the eligibility things that look great. But when I went down to what we funded, it just struck me as being maintenance. You know, it's repairs to an A&P hall, a carpet replacement, a building cost towards a new community hub. Maybe that's reasonable. Club room window and cladding. You know, are we sure that we're spending this on the right things, or are these maintenance items?
I have to ask the committee that. Yeah, James, do you want to comment?
I wasn't on committee, but I think Councillor Wickers has volunteered.
Yeah, so I was going to raise that the understanding of what that fund is and the eligibility criteria. When I got put onto the committee and then had to work through it and understand what we're actually doing. None of them actually met the criteria. Not one of the applications did. So we were then put in the situation of, do we decline them all and apply the strict criteria and not approve any of them, or just take a more pragmatic approach and see how many of the criteria they met, ruled out the ones that were a long way out, and then understanding what the purpose of that fund is. It's funded from FinCos, where developers are paying a percentage to contribute to facilities that council doesn't provide, but the community still use. So you will see that those things that we did approve, the things that we did approve, in principle, are supporting community activities that the community have access to in some way or another.
Okay, thank you for that. Just a little, we talk about FinCos here, but of course this ratepayers' money. Every FinCo passes that cost onto his section cost to the ratepayer. And so, but I guess as long as the FinCos are happy that that's the sort of thing that it's getting spent on.
Well, it's just acknowledging the fact that there are other providers of recreational facilities, because this is what this was about. There are other providers of that aren't council that community members get a benefit from. So it's just a small recognition from in that development process that growing, it is allocated to communities in a general sort of way, growing. There are other providers other than council who are providing those things that ratepayers aren't funding.
Okay, thank you.
But you do raise a question, though. We have a good rapport with our developers now, and maybe it's time to ask them if they're satisfied with the way we are actually applying this. And they will tell us whether or not they think we're wasting their money because they've got to pay it. And could I leave that with you, Jody, to check? because we do have a better rapport with our developers than we've had in the past. All right? Thank you. Andy?
I just raised another point, maybe because I went into this not knowing what it was actually about, and it took me a little bit to understand what we're actually dealing with. So is there a better way of communicating upfront to people who are applying around that eligibility, why it's even an opportunity for them to apply for it?
Mayor James. Oh,
Yes, yeah, we can certainly look at tidying up that application process. We'll go back and see what confusion there may have been around their eligibility and make sure that's tidied up.
I automatically assumed that you would do that anyway. Mayor James.
Yeah, I think speaking more broadly, it does highlight the issues around setting a fund eligibility too tightly, and most people around the table will be aware we discussed the confusingly similarly named Community Facilities Fund yesterday, and the eligibility for that, and that's in development, and the need to not make it so rigid that it doesn't have the flexibility to do what we really want it to do, and this highlights the issues that can arise from that. So watch this space, but that's not for right now.
Thank you. Councillor Joyce.
Yeah, I would just raise one point, and there's a lot of funding avenues for new things. There's not a lot of funding avenues to fix things. And this may be, it's part of the value of this. I know I'm a little bit off topic, but in India, they have a separate railways budget because railways are big over there, and government's always announcing new railways. But maintaining the railways they have never quite make the budget, which is why they have an appalling safety record. You know, sometimes you need to help keep the things going. An example here is the community toy library in Katikati, which had a flood, right? And they couldn't get insurance. So you end up with concrete floors in the church building there. So they needed help. And this actually was a very good use of money to help the community. Is it a maintenance item? Yeah, it is really. But I say it's much easier to go to the community funders, the big trusts, and say, I'm going to build something flashy and new, rather than going to them and saying, actually, we have a need here because we need to fix something. So maybe that is a sweet spot for this fund. Maybe the eligibility, when you're looking at it, it could be something worth looking at.
Thank you. That's Grant.
My question has sort of been answered already, I guess, but by Andy and others. But I was just wondering if there was a general, a sort of a general reason for each of these ones that were declined as to why they didn't meet the criteria. I mean, it would seem that it would be fairly, I know it's confusing, but be fairly easy to see if you are eligible or not. But I'm just wondering if there's a trend with all of these for why they didn't, why they weren't eligible specifically.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. We've actually got the spreadsheet in front of me around all the different columns with the eligibility criteria. And the decision, so decline decision based on didn't meet the funding policy with the rationale connected to it. And a lot of these was either so not deemed a recreation facility, duplications of a current facility. For example, one application was from Te Puna School asking for a double flying fox, where there was a new one installed a couple of months earlier. So that was that sort of rationale was applied. And we went round table in pretty good detail. It was nearly the whole pile on the floor, and we picked them back up. And yeah, but it was good. And Councillor Henry called us. She was, I think it was 1 a.m. in London when she was in on that meeting. But yeah, a really thorough discussion. And so we certainly didn't take this decision lightly.
And I can't really complain about equitable distribution this time.
Could that spreadsheet be circulated to the other members just so they can see the whole matrix of what we worked on?
Thank you. I think that's a really good idea. But I do think at this time, when the economy is so tight and our developers, and we need them to get on with the job of building houses. Anything that would help in a reduction of FinCos or whatever other charges we've got, I think is something that you should discuss with them. If you would, Jody. We can't make a recommendation here, but I just think it's something that is worth talking about. All right. So thank you for that. Any other questions? Thanks, Jason. We'll
Thank you.
move on then and we go to community events update. What's the name? Oh, Vicky.
Tēnā koutou katoa. I will introduce myself as this is my debut in Chambers. I am the event specialist with Western Bay. My name is Vicky Lambert. I do, however, think I have met most of you out in the community. I recognise the smiling faces. I, in the interest of time, will also take the report as read, but will summarise just to provide a platform for questions on the report. As per the report, the purpose is to update the committee on the event facilitation at Western Bay and the Tauranga Western Bay Community Event Fund that we are a part of. The events facilitation role here at Western Bay is a pivotal part of the process for our community groups organising events on our reserves. We effectively remove barriers by being the central location and working internally on the event organiser's behalf. We give guidance with funding and also provide collaboration with external partners already in the community and obviously guide with compliance as well. A little bit of a summary on the Community Event Fund or the Tauranga Western Bay Community Event Fund. This initiative was established in the 22-23 year and has provided event organisers in the Western Bay with an opportunity to propose their event to a much higher level of funding than we have been historically able to provide. The partners of the fund are Tauranga City Council, Western Bay Planning District Council, TECT, Bay Trust and Acorn. The idea of the panel is to give a really considered and fully informed consideration to all of the event applications with that breadth of funder on the panel. You will see in the report that there was a pie graph to represent the attendance of event goers in our district across the wards. I just want to make a note that the graphic you're seeing up here is being borrowed from an internal presentation. So this graphic does include events that are not on reserves. So a slightly increase in the numbers you see in the report. But I can give you that report, the report numbers. In the Katikati Waihi Beach ward, that pie slice represents 52,000 people. Kaimai Omokoroa, just over 19,000, and Te Puke and Makatu, just over 34,000. So some really big numbers for our district. So it's great to see the event impact that we are seeing. The Tauranga Western Bay Community Event Fund has seen considerable growth since its inception. One impact of that is obviously the ramp back up post-COVID, but what the fund has done has removed having been that person on the other side previously and having to apply to 5 or 6 different funders all through different processes. We now have a central point. So it's really enabled potentially some organisations that would have struggled with several different formats to put one concise document together seeking approval. It's also opened up the type of organisation that can apply for funding through the panel. I think funding outcomes, the data set that I'm referring to will be for the 2024 calendar year in the report. And as you can see, we contribute 60,000 per annum to the Community Event Fund. And just very quickly, if you do a total up in that 2024 calendar year, you'll see that the Western Bay events have benefited from over $150,000 in our area. There is obviously crossover between the two councils where we will have supported as well, but just at a real small snapshot, that's an amazing benefit with the collaboration on the other funders.
Could I have a question here? I've got one from Councillor Coxhead.
Just a quick observation. I could be wrong about this. It seems to me a lot of the funded events of the majority, some of them are probably family focused, but there's not an awful lot focused on children. I didn't notice. A little bit, I noticed Youth Fest there, but I didn't notice there was much of a particular focus on children. And probably around criteria, I just have a question around that. How careful are we in terms of criteria, in terms of funding something that's quite politically a hot potato as well? Because there's a few in there that are, I think, well, they are.
Thank you for your question, Councillor. The way that it works, we assess the events that come in for the Western Bay only. And unfortunately, I don't sit on the panel, so I can't talk to the assessment around the political. Jodie may like to step in, which I will welcome you to. I'm not too sure. Could you provide an example, Councillor, of the political? Oh, okay. I'm just trying to identify. Okay.
I'm happy to share that privately, but there's one big one.
And so through you, Madam Chair, I think it's these are the applications that are received that get funded. So it's not, I don't think there's a whole lot of applications for events that are focused on children that did not get funding. It's just that they don't exist. So these are the events that have come to the panel. Yeah, so that's the difference there. I think some of you may have seen Tauranga City Council put on kind of a council-led event for Children's Day, which is a pretty great event. We haven't done that in our district, and because we generally don't put on events ourselves, we generally support others in the community to put on those events. But that is something that we can look at. I think it's a really good point to start to analyse some of these events a little bit further and see, who might be missing out in that. Yeah, so that's something that we can look to do.
Mayor James.
Thank you. I think my observation or experience is that certainly for the events I've been to, they almost always have a large component of children. We might say a cultural festival, but there'll be a lot of children who are part of that. So that's something to bear in mind. Now, I see this as this fund as having been a tremendous success. It seems to pop up everywhere and really support excellent festivals. So my question is there any issues you have or ways that it could work better that you're thinking about, or is it all just fine as far as you're concerned, or what's your thoughts?
In regards to the event facilitation, we're looking at opportunities to reach out and be a bit more proactive in providing workshops, sharing our expertise. We want to enable where possible. In regards to the funding model, I think the proactiveness, we will often attend events to discuss and target organisations to let them know of the funding, specifically the Events Fund, because it's not that old. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, so just to expand on that a little bit, a really good example is we've got all these changes coming in with traffic management plans. which affect all traffic management plans, so for roadworks or anything, but also impact on events. So one thing that our team is looking to do is run some kind of online workshops with some of the organisations that we work with who put on a lot of events and explain to them what that new process is going to look like. Yeah, so that's one way that we can start to, it's not really barriers, but it's just being proactive and helping to make the process smoother, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Daly.
Yeah, just wondering, in terms of continuity, this is speaking as a bit of feedback from an organizer of an event. Like if an event, an annual event gets a significant amount one year, and then maybe their funding is chopped back the following year to accommodate other events, or more events have applied. Is there any consideration of continuity of an event, or continuity, certainty for planning an event, a year in advance after running a successful event? Okay, what happens next? Are we going to be able to do this next year? Can we count on the same level of funding from council? And I got a little bit of feedback that some of the organisers of Matariki Te Puke, for example, maybe felt they were a bit missed out a little bit on that basis.
Oh, dear, sorry, Councillor Daly, I will check into that, but I think they may have got the maximum amount possible for funding. Yeah. So, but I completely understand where you're coming from, having had a background in event management there. You live year to year. But that is one of the considerations in the Community Event Fund, is some weight is given to, can the event go forward without the funding, and how much that impacts. But I'm fairly confident that the funding to that particular event was the maximum.
Is there like an anchor status for events in our district, for example, that you maybe give a bit more priority to than other smaller events, and just to make sure that there is that continuity?
So through you, Madam Chair, no, that is not currently in place through the Western Bay Community Events Fund, which is the collaborative fund. So the criteria is set there, and that is assessed. They have 5 funding rounds a year, and there's no criteria in there that says if you had got funding before, you're guaranteed it. Again, you don't have different statuses, none of that, because that's not what the event is set up for. Tauranga City Council do have a different approach to how they fund events. So they fund to the Community Events Fund, but then they also have I think they still have their Legacy Events Fund as well, which is the multi-year funding that they provide to some of the larger events. For example, Ames Games, I think the Jazz Festival, those sorts of things. That's not something that we've explored as a council, to have those, because we primarily, we haven't really had any of those, real long-term legacy events in place. Probably the only one we've had is maybe the Avo Fest, which has been going for a long time. So if that's that would be a different approach for the council to take. We can't change the criteria though for the Community Events Fund, because it's not our fund.
And just on the traffic management plans, how many of these events have had to use that funding to pay for traffic management? And just is the new approach, where's the funding for the new approach?
The funding is not ring fenced to a certain aspect of the event budget when it's considered by the panel. So we're not saying it's tagged to a particular expense line, so I couldn't answer that particular question. The second part of your question about traffic management plan and changes and costs is a far bigger question. We don't really know yet. It rolls out on the 1st of July. So ideally, with the new risk-based approach, some smaller type events may benefit with the new changes. But I think it's going to be a little bit of wait and see.
And I only gave that example. I don't know specifics, but maybe it was the traffic management plan where in the past council has supported events by providing traffic management, but maybe that's been withdrawn down the track.
No, that's still in place. we still do that. Yep, we cover the cost for traffic management for some of the major events.
I think though it would be wrong to be cozy and expect that if I make an application this year, that I'm going to get it next year as well. I think any event has got to justify its performance and then apply again. But the issue is you're not discriminated out of applying. And if you've had a successful one, may I compliment you on the multicultural Fiji, Chile, and Diwali, and I'm not quite sure what all else, but you've got out there. But it really is quite fascinating when you see the number of projects and the work that you're doing. So, Vicky, thank you, and welcome to this council. And don't go off, rushing off and doing something else again. We like to keep our people here. And so it's time. So
Thank you, Madam Chair.
right. So no further questions. I think then that really brings us to a conclusion today. And I've got one more to go, I'm told, and a pest-free park. And if someone could tell me who's going to have the pest-free park would be quite helpful. Mayor Granger, Councillor Granger.
Well, we've almost got that already at Cooney Reserve, madam. We're ready
I'll
to
just
roll.
call you Murray in the future.
And when it comes to unveiling this in the spring next year, tie it in with the Godwit Return Festival, I mean, it's all tied on there. I mean, you know, problem solved, job done.
And the question is?
Asked me who was going to have the park, and I just told you, Cooney Reserve.
Thank you. Jody, Liesl?
Thank you. Yeah, as outlined in the report, this is just to provide a short update since Pest-free Parks was approved for go-ahead. I just, in addition to the report, I'll just provide a brief update since the report was written about a month ago. The environment plan layer that was spoken about has basically been completed now. So that's with the GIS team, and they're creating a physical layer to be integrated into the map. The methodology for prioritising reserves has been created. So the criteria that we will use to kind of figure out which reserves we'll be working on in the short term has been created, but we haven't therefore put the parks through that yet. And we're also discussing with Regional Council about potentially using a pest plant tool that they already use and integrating that into our map, which will be quite beneficial because we can work directly with Regional Council on that if it works out as we hope.
We're not duplicating their work again, are we?
No, exactly. So by using this tool, the data that we collect can be shared directly with Regional Council, and then they can sort of advise how management may need to be taken and who will be responsible for it. But happy to take any questions.
And we have to have a park. Which park are we going for?
There's some great offers. There's a lot though. So as mentioned, we've created the methodology for choosing which parks will be prioritised in the short term, but we haven't put the parks through that process yet. So we haven't got that decided yet. We anticipate that there will be quite a few that would pretty much reach pest-free park status already. So yeah, all those discussions are yet to be had.
Councillor Daly.
Yeah, I sort of started talking about this at the start of the meeting, but so got my agendas wrong. But at the last meeting, we discussed the problem of KiwiRail reserves adjacent to our own reserves, and the example I was giving was that last night at Lawrence Oliver Park, you know, there's a railway running right down beside it, and this huge wattle tree had fallen over one of the drains, and I mean the upper branches nearly made it into our reserve, but theoretically they're still in the KiwiRail reserve. But KiwiRail seem to have a hands-off policy towards maintaining those rail reserves, and you know, when they built that new bridge 91 in Te Puke, right beside, you know, our new wetland, we had to pay, and when we created the cycleway, we had to establish a lease agreement or a license agreement, license to occupy, and now cycleway goes under one bridge and then under another bridge, and for that privilege we pay them about $1,500 a year, increasing at 5% per annum for that right, but they don't provide any maintenance of those of those corridors that we are actively traversing and running right beside, and provides a, you know, aesthetic value to our reserves. So I was just wondering if you have given any consideration to, or any contact with KiwiRail to maybe some sort of offsets to, you know, the lease versus the maintenance of their reserve, because they're clearly hands off. But it does create ongoing issues, you know, when these big wattle trees that sprout up, or moth plants are sprouting right beside them, and then falling onto our reserves and the seeds blowing around. So there is an impact, and I think there should be some consideration from KiwiRail towards us, not always us towards them, because they've given us the privilege of using their corridor.
Within the methodology that we're using, one of the criteria is considering neighbouring properties and their current state of biodiversity or weeds. And so in that instance, sometimes we may consider not working on a reserve as a priority if, for example, KiwiRail was next door with a massive seed source of a moth plant. It would be not a very efficient use of our time and budget because of that ongoing seed source right next door. So that is definitely something that we'll be considering. There is another piece of work with Waikokupu that have been looking at the wider catchment and have had some really positive discussions with KiwiRail around weed management, which is a really, really cool approach that I'll be really interested in working with them on pessary parks and, you know, potentially, hopefully, in other catchments as well, if we can get there. So there has been work on that. It is difficult though. Yeah.
So, and follow on from Grant, does that mean that you will follow on and negotiate with KiwiRail as to what the role is of their maintenance of the land adjoining the rail? So it would be so easy just to leave it. And but Jody, can you do anything? Is there a network that connects you to staff of New Zealand Rail?
So through you, Madam Chair, this issue is one that has been around for a really long time. The maintenance of those rail corridors and state highway corridors, and the fact that when you have land next door and you're trying to do pest management there, and it's not happening in the corridor right next door, it really defeats your efforts. So those are conversations that have been put to KiwiRail many times, and I'm sure will continue to be. I think at the local level, the work that Waikokupu have done and how they are trying to work with KiwiRail at that really specific level is starting to have a bit of an impact. In terms of getting KiwiRail to completely change their maintenance program and how they do that, you know, that's a much longer conversation, but definitely we will continue to advocate for that. Yeah. And I think the example Councillor Daly used is a really good one of the wattle tree falling and just creating significant issues for the land right next door while we're paying, or the Te Ara Kahikatea Trail Trust is paying for the right to just access under that land. Seems a little bit unbalanced to me, but we would definitely continue to advocate back to them to maybe do their part a little bit in that maintenance.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe Mayor James could open the door from his level and see if you can work with staff to actually open the door and start talking about it, because it's not something that's going to go away, and it's been there for a long time, and it would be really good if one of us could actually have a relationship with Railway and try and have a positive approach. Even if we do the work, but they have a contact person that we can work with to actually get some decisions from them.
If I may, Madam Chair, there was a a meeting with KiwiRail board sometime probably over a year ago now. It was just a relationship meeting, but the board's changed around a bit in recent times, I believe. So it'd be good to get in touch with them again. It might be practically, it might be better for next triennium at this point, but yeah, certainly we can. I can see what can be done there.
Thank you. And in the meantime, thank you very much. And I think we've concluded our meeting today. And so thank you very much for your attendance, and I declare it closed. And we'll back here at 1 o'clock.